Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Strategy Honestly. This is a series where we try to explain the key concepts and tools used in strategy work and give some helpful tips what to use and when. My name is Janne, and with me I have my colleagues Pyry and Pyry here, and we will be the hosts.
Yep, but it's not just going to be the three of us. We will also have some guest stars, people who work with strategy, and then also business professionals who use strategy as a tool.
Well, the purpose of this series is to demystify some of the basic strategy concepts and also to introduce some of the more powerful tools that we use day to day when we do strategy work with our clients and which other professionals also are using. So we find that often strategy is sort of confusing and maybe also glorified in some sense, and we want to tell the behind the scenes story of how strategy is done in practice. So that's the purpose of this series.
And today we will start probably the most known strategy framework, SWOT analysis.
And I think in a way that's also probably the most useless framework in strategy, right?
Okay. Well, before we start sort of banging on the SWOT analysis too much, let's define some concepts here. So SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, it's a framework. And for a framework to be useful, it needs to be MECE. So that means mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. And that is because a framework is there to clarify our thinking. It's basically to put our thinking into some kind of structured order and thereby allowing us to break a bigger elephant into smaller pieces. And the reason for that is quite simple. Human beings have a very short or very limited short-term memory. So to most of us only remember 5-6 items at a time. And a framework helps us then to structure a bigger problem into smaller pieces that we can manage with our little brain. And SWOT, if it's a good framework, it should be MECE, and that means, of course, MECE means that it mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive means that it's like a puzzle. So if you have all the pieces there and the puzzle is complete, you see the full picture. However, if there's pieces missing or if there's duplicate pieces, then it's not MECE. So it's a very simple concept to think of.
Yeah. And well, first question is SWOT MECE?
Yeah, well, strengths and weaknesses are opposite, and so are threats and opportunities. And further, they do not overlap. Strengths and weaknesses are internal attributes, while opportunities and threats are something external. I guess if we use that as a base of the logic, we can argue that SWOT is MECE.
Yeah, that's kind of nicely put in a way that you compare those and have that internal external, which is intrinsically kind of a MECE thing to compare. For me, still, it kind of lacks the clarity. I'm not sure if that's covering the entire picture. What would you say?
I agree with you. It doesn't hurt to take another angles as well.
Well, you have to be careful when you use the SWOT analysis. And I guess, Pyry, you're a skeptic. I agree. I'm also a skeptic of the value of the SWOT analysis. And the reason is, maybe we should actually outline some of the reasons why we think that the SWOT analysis can be sort of tricky to use. So what are the goods? What are the bads? When do you use it? When should you not use it?
Yeah, and like I was a bit forced to think of the good things of SWOT analysis. And I think what first comes into my mind is that SWOT is a good tool to have a lot of people's opinions very quickly. You can just grab a post-it notes and pencils and have people kind of brainstorming about a thing. But I think that's as far as it goes. I'm not sure.
Hey, I love brainstorming. That doesn't sound that bad. So what is the problem?
Yeah, well, you can do those sort of brainstorming sessions, but then the kind of so what there leaves very vague. So in strategy, it's about getting from point A into point B, and it's about the action in between. And SWOT doesn't drive that thinking, it just produces ideas.
Right. So if you think of a SWOT analysis, and we have some of the examples here in this video series as well, you often get a lot of bullet points in each of the 4 boxes. And as you said, they are opinions. They usually come from a brainstorming session. They don't have the fact base behind them. They're not even hypotheses on certain actions that we should do. They are more like observations. So they're very passive, not forward-looking. And it's hard to synthesize the so what of a SWOT analysis. What does this analysis as a whole actually mean for our strategy? And that's maybe one of the biggest reasons why we are sort of cautious about this, because if you find the SWOT analysis in its raw form in the final strategy document, then probably something's gone wrong.
Yep.
Because it's not going to be an action-oriented, logical, fact-based story behind it.
Yeah. And to drive this point home, I actually made 2 examples. So we have a textbook example and then a real-life example of SWOT analysis. And in the textbook example, actually, things go quite nicely, and you can draw an actual conclusion from the textbook example. But then in the real life example, you get a lot of these messy points, and things get very complex, and it's not as simple as it is in the textbook example.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of the background why we are skeptical about the SWOT analysis as a primary tool. I mean, it can be a secondary tool that you use in the beginning of the project, but as a primary tool, it has the problem that it diverges. The more you work on it, the more it's more confusing, the more spread out it typically becomes. Divergent is a mathematical term, but I think it works really well here as well.
And it's a bit shame, since SWOT is often introduced in university classes as kind of this first introduction to strategy and one key pillar of strategy. And I'm not sure if that's at all what SWOT stands for, actually.
Right.
Yeah. I guess our main message is that SWOT is perfectly good tool for initial idea gathering and brainstorming. But the problem arises if you see SWOT analysis in the final strategy document and there are not synthesis or implications drawn from it, and sadly that is often the case.
Yeah. I agree in that SWOT is good to use upfront, quickly to introduce people into the topic, but then going forward in the strategy process, you should switch into more powerful tools and use those.
One thing I forgot to mention earlier was that often in real life strategy projects, a framework, we don't use it as it is, we actually adapt it. And for the SWOT analysis, you could think of adapting it by adding 2 more boxes, risk and mitigation, for example. Again, you have to be very careful on how you define these extra boxes and how you adapt it, because you want to make sure that the new framework also is MECE and has that clean structure. Anyways, we talked about more powerful tools. I guess that's going to be the topic of another episode. But for now, if you like this episode, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Make sure you have the alert button on as well. And please send us feedback. You can leave us feedback right here. You can send us email. We have the addresses at the end of this video. And if you like our musings, you can go to reddal.com insights section, and you will find more articles on topics related to business building and strategy and growth in general.
All right, guys, stay sharp, stay critical, and when doing strategy, remember to drive fact-based insights and recommendations. Until next time, cheers.
Cheerios.
Cheers.